Playing center backs as attackers and attackers as center backs, completely doing away with wingers and somehow still dominating the Serie A. Inter Milan under Simone Inzaghi is up to something. His new, and I must say very strange strategy looks dumb on paper, but when Inter Milan executes it on the pitch, it's a beauty to watch, and for the opposition, their worst nightmare. This is Inzaghi's secret tactic that is changing Serie A. Everything about current Inter's game is strange. 95% of teams in Europe depend on their attackers and midfielders to make things happen. From possession to scoring, it's all in the hands of the upfield players. The defenders are there for one thing, to defend. It has been like this since the beginning of time. But Inzaghi is turning the whole thing around. Inter's game plan rests on the shoulders of the defenders, and this is something we've not seen before. And that isn't the only strange thing about Inzaghi's strategy. He uses one of the rarest formations in the history of the sport, 3-5-2. When last did you see a team use this formation? But as you know, the formation, or how it looks on paper, is not the real deal. What really matters is how the players actually execute it on the pitch. You see, right now, Inter Milan is probably the most flexible team in the world. I know you can say playing flexibly as a team isn't a big deal, and yeah, you're right. We see teams do this all the time, especially the big dogs with the best players. But Inter? They do this on a completely different level. Normally when we see other teams have their players interchange on the pitch, it's always monitored and restricted. Players have a zone they can roam freely in. There are certain positions they can run into and positions they can't. So to an extent, these guys are still predictable, but the way Inter players interchange, it looks so random. Kinda like they're just running into any position they want to, but don't be deceived, it is all part of Inzaghi's master plan. Take the team's defensive build-up for example. Of course, it starts with the goalkeeper, but guess who approaches the goalie to receive a pass? It's the midfielders. Any football fan knows how strange that is. Normally the goalie sets the ball up and passes to either the center backs or fullbacks. And these defenders pass to the midfielders or play it directly to the attackers. But Inzaghi is flipping the script. Instead of letting the defenders play close to the goalie during a setup, sometimes he brings the midfielders closer instead, and he has a genius reason for doing this. As expected during a build-up or goal kick, the opposition puts pressure in the middle because more often than not, the ball ends up there. Whether the keeper decides to pass to the defenders or play it along himself, it always finds its way to the middle of the pitch. Inzaghi knows he can't escape this, so he figured out a way to relieve the pressure in the middle. So that when the ball does get to the middle, Inter players have little to no pressure to deal with. With the midfielder dropping deep to receive a pass from the goalie, they draw the press with them and away from the middle of the pitch. Think about it, the opponents supposed to mark the midfielders won't just stand idle. They'll have to follow the midfielders. Now you're thinking, now that the midfield is empty, how does the ball move around? How exactly does Inter advance with the ball? Well, this is where the center backs come in. They push up front to occupy the space that is now empty. I can't even lie, I never imagined a situation where center backs are the ones tasked with linking up with the strikers. But yeah, Inzaghi is one strange man, and trust me, there's more. Many times, the opposition quickly reacts to Inter's cheeky move and, return to the middle to stop the pitch to stop the defenders from advancing. But little do they know, they're only playing into Inzaghi's trap. When this happens, the opponents leave the midfielder who is actually with the ball, giving him extra time to scan the pitch and make wiser decisions. In common, we know midfielders are the last guys you want to give extra time. Their creativity is on another level. A single pass or solo drive from them can split the whole opposition. And for the overlapping defenders, their run doesn't just end in the midfield, Inzaghi have them doing crazier things. You'd expect the center backs to return to their position after doing whatever they have to do in the middle of the pitch, or at least remain in the middle till the game resets. But that's not the case here. The center backs would play quick passes with the attacking midfielders or attackers and continue their dashing run into the opposition's final third for the finish. Yeah, you heard that right. Center backs making their way into the opponent's box even before the strikers get there. With Inzaghi, we see center backs playing ahead not just the midfielders, but strikers. And it works just fine for the team, especially when the opposition doesn't fall for Inter's initial midfield bait and stays fixed in the middle of this pitch. In situations like this, the center backs can't hold on to the ball in the middle for long. so they just pass the forward or sideways and continue their forward run. And hang on a bit, if you've made it to this point of the video and haven't hit that subscribe button yet, you can fix it by simply clicking it down below so you get more content like this. It's that easy. You see, it's not every time Inzaghi lets his center back make those crazy runs, sometimes he makes them stay put. And he often does this when he plays against stronger and more confident sides like Juventus, AC Milan, and Napoli. You know, other Italian giants. The thing with these teams is, they're not scared of going man for man. Just like Inter, they also have quality world-class players, so they're not going to overthink anything or focus on positional plays. They'll simply go man for man with you, and Inzaghi once again is a step ahead. In situations like this, he doesn't send his center backs up front, but he still brings his midfielders deep. During build-ups, you'll see the midfielders and the defenders playing very close to the goalie, playing back and short passes to themselves, inviting the opposition to come in for the press. The more the opponent commits to the press, the more they leave space behind them. Space that the strikers or attacking mids can drop into and receive a long pass. And yeah, we've seen Inter Milan execute this perfectly countless times. I'm sure by now you already get the point. Try to free up as much space as possible in the middle of the pitch, even before the ball gets there. But what about cases where the opponents actually stand their ground and don't commit to the press? Inter's whole game plan is ruined, right? Well, you, my friend, are very wrong. In cases where the opponents are smart enough to not just free up space in the middle of the pitch, Inter turns their focus to the flanks. They pass the ball to the wingbacks, and this is where things get interesting. Remember when I said Inzaghi doesn't use wingers at all? Well, yeah, that means the fullbacks have limited options when they receive a pass, or at least that's what is expected. Normally, fullbacks play with the wingers, passing the ball to them and making overlapping or underlapping runs forward to create options and set up for a cross. I mean, we see Trent of Liverpool do this a lot. But Inter does not play with wingers, or how do they solve this problem? Well, once again, Inzaghi turns to his center backs to fill in. The CBs would rush in to support the fullbacks, either playing as a pressing option behind them, and then we see the fullbacks making inside or outside runs deep into the opponent's area. This is why many times we see Inter crosses coming from the middle of the pitch, and we see the cross coming from a defender aiming for a striker or another defender in the box. Just take a look at this cross from Bastoni, one of Inter's wide center backs. And you know what happens when the wide center backs push wide and high? Midfielders drop deep to support the defense, giving the wide CBs more freedom. And if you've noticed already, Inzaghi always has a plan B for every move. Sometimes plans fail, and Inzaghi is always ready for that. Anytime, the opponent marks out the center backs by adding more bodies in their half. Inzaghi has his players change the opponent's focus by overloading the midfield. When this happens, the opponents are forced to choke also the middle of the pitch to make sure the fullback gets overwhelmed. And this is where Inzaghi pulls out his next trick. A player, oftentimes one of the midfielders, would suddenly isolate himself by moving to the other side of the pitch, giving the fullback an emergency passing option. And of course, the next thing we see is a long cross field ball to catch the opposition off guard and also keep possession. And speaking of possession, Inter isn't one of those teams that prioritize possession. They aren't like Man City, Real Madrid, or Arsenal. Inter focuses on getting the ball into the opponent's half as soon as they can, not minding taking risks along the way. Well, we already established that Inzaghi always has a plan B. This guy is all about recovery plans, and when it comes to pushing into the opponent's box as soon as possible, with center backs, Inzaghi once again is another awesome genius recovery plan just in case they lose possession while attacking. Inzaghi realizes that center backs or defenders are generally better markers of the ball, so he once again uses them as his first line of defense anytime his team loses the ball. Remember, during a build-up, the center backs continue their run into the opposition's third. Inzaghi doesn't only do this to make his attack more dynamic and unpredictable, but with the CBs high up on the pitch, Inter has more chances at quickly recovering the ball anytime the team loses possession. In other words, the center backs don't just return to their position anytime the team loses possession, they immediately turn defense into attack, quickly man-marking the opponents, reducing the opponent's possibility of starting a counterattack, while the strikers and midfielders drop deep and block other passing options deep on the pitch. If you think about this is more like the attackers just giving the center backs the opportunity to do what they do best: even if it is in the attacker's positions. Now, you have to admit, Inter is the most flexible team in Europe right now, with midfielders that can effectively drop deep and perform like center backs, CBs that can effortlessly push up to the midfield, play with the ball and still make dashing runs into the opponent's box to convert crosses, and through passes from attacking players, and lastly, attackers that always comes deep to the middle of the pitch to create passing option and also block opponents' passing option. Inter is just simply one of the most exciting teams to watch right now, and also on the sweet path of adding another Serie A title to their trophy cabinet. But can they really go all the way through? Can they be back-to-back champions, or will Napoli take the crown? Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe buttons to the channel too.